Let me get out of your way. Ladies and gentlemen, the House Government Operations Committee is called to order. Welcome back, everyone. We only thought yesterday was our last day. Are there any personal orders? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Representatives Byrd, Calfee, Cochran, Crawford, Dixie, Faison, Johnson, Lafferty, Lamar, Littleton, Rudder, Stewart, Warner, Vice Chairman Reedy, Chairman Reagan.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been called back into session to hear a single bill, House Bill 490 by Chairman Terry.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Chairman Terry, is your bill traveling with any amendments?
Thank you, Chairman Committee. It's traveling with Amendment 8147.
And that was put on in a previous committee, correct?
That was put on in Health.
Thank you. And you require no amendments from this committee, correct?
Correct.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion and a second on the bill. The Freudian slip there. Chairman Terry, I know you probably feel like a pincushion after all the committees today, but you're recognized to explain your bill, sir, as amended.
Right. Thank you, Chairman and Committee. And what this bill does as amended, it does 5 things. The first thing it does is it sets up a medical cannabis commission in order to help develop a non-biased medical cannabis program for when the federal government removes cannabis from Schedule 1. Secondly, it sets up a process for decriminalizing possession of 0.9% THC cannabis oil for a limited number of patients with diseases. Currently, it is decriminalized. 0.9% THC oil is decriminalized for epilepsy and seizures. We are adding 8 other conditions to that. It has the commission prioritize their recommendations for the creation of a patient registration system in order to facilitate reciprocity and access for patients, including those 9 groups, to obtain the 0.9% oil. It prohibits what I call a corporate medical cannabis program until cannabis is removed from Schedule 1. So in other words, if the program calls for cultivation, distribution, processing, or shipping of cannabis, it explicitly does not mention patients or research in the event that we would like to either have patients do research or decriminalize for patients in the future. The bill does have a fiscal note. It is funded in the budget. Speaker Sexton is supportive of the bill. Governor Lee has removed his philosophical flag from the bill. The Departments of Safety and Health, as well as law enforcement, are deferred, and the bill currently is going to the Senate calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. And for the benefit of this committee, as well as those that may be watching online that missed your earlier presentation, would you please give us the other diseases that this is going to be allowed for?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. Alzheimer's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, HIV or AIDS, and sickle cell disease.
Thank you. Members, you've heard an explanation of the bill. Do we have questions? Chairman Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The children and I guess adults as well that have the seizures, does this amount help them that they're taking now, or would this allow them to have more? Because I know there were some of them here that were like witnesses.
Thank you.
You're recognized.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Sorry about that. That is a great question. Currently, if you have seizures or epilepsy, you are decriminalized and you can possess the 0.9% oil. The issue is for those patients, in order how to get it. That's why that one part here is so important as far as the commission prioritizing their recommendations for registration. It would allow those patients to get registered to where they could get it somewhere closer, like Arkansas. They have a program over there, or Georgia. And that's why that part's in there. It does not increase the amount of THC that they can get. We've kept it at that, but that part would help facilitate them. But of course, the recommendations would have to come from the commission, and it would be something that we would have to come back next year and pass some legislation for that, for the actual registration.
Chair Lady Littleton, follow up.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just one more. Is that enough for them? Does it actually help them, or do they actually need a little bit more of the?
Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you. Great question. So I've got 2 people that I've become, good friends with. TJ that testified last week. For him, if he can get up to 0.5 or to 0.9 oil, that can help him. And so the issue for him and his family is they need to get registered so they can get it. She keeps it 0.3 because she just has she's not going to go somewhere else and do something illegal and get some oil. So that's why she needs the registration, so she can have reciprocity. I have another family that I've gotten close to, and her name's Alexis Bortel, and she takes oils twice a day. And when she has an aura, she has to take 100% oil, not 0.9% oil, but 100% that's in a nasal spray that gets rid of her seizure like that. And she has that she has to carry with her. So this bill wouldn't necessarily help her in that situation, but it would help the access for those like TJ.
You have another?
One more.
Pardon me, Chairman. Chair Lady Littleton, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last question. Can they get the 9% or the 0.9 here, or do they have to get it like in Arkansas or? a neighboring state.
You recognize, Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you, Chairman. They have to get it somewhere else. It's not available here.
Next on the list, I have Chairman Cochran. You recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you answered a few of my questions right there, Chairman Terry. But let me ask this one first, and I've got just a couple brief follow-ups. 0.9% is that particular amount, is it legal federally?
Mr. Sponsor.
No.
Okay.
Follow up, please, Chairman Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then, so if between now and when we come back into session, let's say that the federal government at that point, that they make marijuana Schedule 2 instead of Schedule 1, does the role of the commission that we are establishing, does their role change at all if between now and next January, marijuana becomes a Schedule 2 and not a Schedule 1?
Yeah, that's a great question. And part of why we're doing this is the anticipation that they are going to deschedule or reschedule cannabis. The UN and World Health Organization have taken it off their most dangerous list. And so we are expecting that. There's been bills up there, the MORE Act, which passed last year in the House. We expect them to bring something back. The commission, the point of the commission is, say they do deschedule it or reschedule it, it's very likely that we may have 10, 20 bills that people want to come through here. But if we have something in place where we have recommendations and people that have looked at that issue, we can be focused on one more issue. Because, if they do deschedule it, the question then becomes, do you have 100% oil, which I was talking about the spray, is that a Schedule 2? Do you have something potentially in a cream as a Schedule 3 or 4? And do you have something like a 0.9% like we have in here, something that you would do like behind the counter, where you would still get a letter of attestation? It's just not in the schedule because of it's not that strong of a, it doesn't have a high THC content. And so those are things that they would look at.
Okay.
Is that, or you have another one, sir?
Just
You recognize-
just briefly. So, and I'm just gonna ask both of these together. So mainly on as far as the role of the commission, I just wanted to make sure that between now and next January, again, if marijuana or cannabis is descheduled or rescheduled, that suddenly that commission doesn't have any type of licensing powers or anything like that before we come back. And so if you wouldn't care to answer that, and let me go ahead and just ask my follow-up as well. Obviously, I respect you as a legislator. You and I are usually on the same page. I know how deeply you look into issues and how deeply you study them. I know you do that in your day job as well. And so that's why I asked this last question. Just in your medical judgment, the conditions that we're adding to this bill, the conditions that can now use cannabis oil, is it your best professional opinion? You think that this will legitimately help those conditions? So if you wouldn't care to answer those two, and that's all I've got. Thank you.
Mr. Sponsor, you recognize.
All right. Thank you. Great questions. First question goes to any action that commission may take. They give recommendations. They give that to us back January 1, 2022. We have to act on that. So they're not going to be doing any rules or anything like that. These conditions, and I'm glad you asked that question. I've got a list of studies that can where they have had some benefit for Alzheimer's, ALS, cancer. All of them have some study behind that. And I will say that, the way that the bill is structured in that letter of attestation, they have to have tried conventional treatment. Years ago, 2015, we passed the Right to Try Act, which said that if something was in past phase 1 of FDA trials, it's essentially took it from, I think, 100 doctor hours down to 3 hours to get somebody into that. And so knowing that there are studies out there, you have a bona fide physician practitioner relationship, and I've got an AG's opinion as well that says the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, which is part of the Department of Justice, has also not made it a policy to suspend or revoke the authority of physicians and pharmacists to prescribe and dispense controlled substances under the federal law as a result of a medical professional's participation participation in a state medical cannabis program, add in your First Amendment right, and with a patient, that's a discussion that they're going to have with that patient before they've signed that letter of attestation. So again, they will have tried other things, and at that point in time, do that letter.
Next on the list, I have Chairman Calfee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sponsor, are we getting a cart before the horse? You keep talking about the anticipation that cannabis is going to be removed from a Class 1 drug. Shouldn't we be addressing this after it's removed instead of now?
You're recognized, Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you. And again, that's a great question. And there is, this bill specifically does not prohibit research or for patients. So this commission, and again, we are prioritizing what we can get as far as their recommendations for any sort of reciprocity. So there is that function as well.
Well, I remember
You're recognized.
I voted for a bill one time to let Tennessee Tech do research, and then the president at that time barred us from getting a seed to grow the marijuana. Were you here then?
Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you. I will tell you, there was one, and that's part of this bill, is I explicitly excluded the research that's being done at those universities to make sure that's in there so that they're not impacted from that. So I don't know if I was there specifically on that one, but I was here for one of those, and I'll be honest with you, I voted against that bill. I think it impacted MTSU. I just did not know the issue. And I think it was in my first session, and I just did not know the issue. And for me, seeing patients, seeing what have patients tell me before they go into surgery, what they've had to go through, seeing patients that are on opioids that have bowel obstructions, things like that, it changed my mind. Having those discussions, talking with Alexis Bortel and her family. And so those are some things that had changed my mind. So to your point, I think I was there. I voted no, but through my research and getting involved with patients, I've obviously changed my mind.
Chairman Calfee, follow up.
One last one. My wife and I have custody of a 19-month-old because his parents have drug and alcohol problems. And my wife has been the chairman of the board of the Anti-Drug Coalition in Roane County for several years now. And we all know that marijuana is a gateway drug. And I don't know why in the world they named it this, but our DA, our public defender, some judges, sheriffs and such. Now, we call it recovery court now, which is proper name. It used to be a drug court, and why they ever named it that, I don't know. But the first graduate of that drug court, as it was back then, had never done any drugs except marijuana. He had a nice house. He had a nice boat, a motorcycle, a pickup, a car, a wife and kids. And he told me that he'd smoked marijuana in the shower. And I believe him because I had an uncle that smoked cigarettes in the shower. He'd light one and go in, lay it up on above the shower door, and he'd smoke a cigarette while he was taking a shower. So I believe that. And he just got so mellow, as they used to say back in the 60s and early 70s. He wouldn't go to work. He smoked marijuana all day. So it's just having saying that, it's hard for me to vote for any marijuana bill. And thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Response, Mr. Sponsor?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate those. And I think I'm getting my committees confused because I've been up here so many times. But, the last I'd heard, Tennessee's third in the country in recreational marijuana. It's behind, I think, California and Kentucky. So it's there. The issue is patience. I don't want patients going and getting who knows what on the street. They don't know the percentage of THC that they've got. They don't know if it's laced with something. They don't know what it is. But if they can get a 0.9% oil and it keeps them from going to the street and it helps them, that's a win. That keeps them from going and going down that road. I do understand where you come from. That's one of the reasons why, like I said, when I first came up here, same situation. I would not vote for these. And as I did my research, I realized that it was something that I needed to step out on and be a patient advocate.
Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Dr. Terry, I appreciate all your hard work on this. Looking in the bill as amended, the reciprocity portion of that, so if there is a medical patient in need, what would be the soonest in the state of Tennessee could they get that card and be provided with reciprocity? Do they have to wait until 2023?
Mr. Sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you. Great question. So this bill does not have reciprocity it doesn't create that process. And what it does is it has the commission prioritize that as their recommendation. They would give a recommendation January 1, and then this body, whether it's me or you or some other that wants to run a bill, and then as soon as we can get that bill through a committee and then hopefully get signed, then that's when that would, how long it would take.
Chairman Reedy, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members, I do have vast knowledge of this topic. I'm probably the only state lawmaker in the state of Tennessee that helped pass the bill with industrial hemp and grew it on my farm. And I went through the complete process of permitting, harvesting, selling, and meeting with folks on there. And it's interesting when we talk about hemp or industrial hemp, we're talking about a plant that produces 0.3% or less in THC. But as soon as you go over that 0.3, we become criminals with this. And of course, Dr. Terry and I have had the discussion. It is an arbitrary number between marijuana and hemp, that 0.3%, that even when I started pushing House Bill 1164 to pass it in the state to require in a pilot program for hemp farmers to get busy, that you needed 4% or more to get high. But when we're talking about this in an oil form, non-smokable, I don't see the big hiccup in even having a 1%. And my hope the last 3 years was trying to get the federal government, they descheduled hemp because it was not that above the 0.3%. But we wouldn't be having this discussion if the federal government would have went ahead 3 years ago now and just changed it to a 1% THC level. And with that, with the cannabinoids and everything, the THC, and I'm trying to decide if I really want to speak up, tell the whole story on the House floor, talking about those medical patients who just that minor amount of CBD, and of course THC or Delta-9 is a form of the CBD, but the medical research, I had medical doctors as well as college professors coming out to my farm to discuss what the difference was and the medical necessity of this plant. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Terry.
Representative Warner, I'm sorry, Mr. Sponsor, you have a response?
No, just thanks for the
Representative Warner,
comments.
you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I call for previous question.
Previous question's been called. Is there any objection? Would you like to withdraw? Well, actually, the next on the list is Leader Faison. Pass, okay. Representative Stewart, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just a quick question for the sponsor. Is it your intention to take this all the way through the floor and get it passed without further amendment? I know it sounds like there have been some compromises that have gone into this.
Mr. Sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you. That is my intent.
And so if we get to the floor, I know you have some other committees. If we get to the floor and it's been amended in a material way, will you tell us that?
Yes.
Mr. Sponsor.
And last, pardon me, Mr. Chair, one more question.
Representative Stewart.
And are you going to oppose any amendments to this bill?
Mr. Sponsor.
Yes.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you.
All right, before we entertain the question here, I see nobody else on my list. We're going to briefly step out of session. I'm going to recognize legal. We're out of session. Katie, would you please give us the position of the federal law on this issue?
Katie Robertson, Legal Services. The federal law provides that the THC level of anything above 0.3% is illegal to possess.
And one last question here on the supremacy clause of the Constitution. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, the supremacy clause provides that that federal laws and the federal Constitution is a supreme law of the land, which means that it takes priority over any conflicting state laws.
Thank you. Members, I want you to be aware of that. Also, the sponsor pointed out early in his comments that there are, as you are well aware, a number of states that have chosen to ignore the federal law and permitting this stuff to be authorized within their state boundaries. And likewise, the federal government has not volunteered to do anything about it. So for each of you that have to vote on this, I'll advise you to search your own conscience in relation to what you've been heard. With that, do we have any other comments, questions? We are going back in session. And any questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, without objection, we're going to vote on sending House Bill 490 to Finance, Ways and Means with a positive recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? Nope. Wish to be recorded with the clerk as a no, let them know. And with that, Chairman Terry, you move out of the committee with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman of the Committee.
Members, since our last session, we have we've already thanked our staff, so I won't do that again. But again, thank you for showing up again. Do we have any comments? Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. The non-debatable, we are adjourned.